Well, it's our great pleasure to have Jason Kilar, the CEO of Hulu.com, with us in Chapel Hill all day today. We're excited to talk to you and welcome back to campus.
Thank you very much, Jed.
There's a lot for us to cover. We want to talk about the Hulu business model. We want to talk about the notion of a joint venture, which Hulu is, the future of online streaming and sustainability in that platform. But let's start with just the notion of a joint venture, which Hulu is of several different business partners and television networks. How has that gone to this point over the last year and a half or so, and how have your partners judged the success of the venture that they've entered into with you all?
So it's interesting, it is a joint venture. I consider it more, we have a number of investors who are very strategically focused on the company, but it is a joint venture, and the history of joint ventures is awful, absolutely terrible. And when you actually think about, it's tough to come up with a long list of successful joint ventures. There's a number of them in media, but still, joint ventures, they have so many odds stacked against them at the very start. I'd say that in the case of Hulu, we've been very, very fortunate to have the right people involved in the joint venture, and specifically the CEO of NBC Universal, the CEO of Fox Corporation, the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, and the CEO of Providence Equity Partners. So those are 4 out of the 5 investors in the company or shareholders in the company. The last set is the team. Everybody of the team actually owns a piece of Hulu. And the reason why it's worked is because we all have a common vision about where we want Hulu to go. That's critically important, that from the very start we were very simple and very disciplined about who we wanted to be and why we felt with such strong conviction why that was so important. And so a lot of the credit for the success of Hulu thus far goes to folks like Jeff Zucker, who's the NBC Universal CEO, Bob Iger, who's the CEO of the Walt Disney Company, and Chase Carey, and before him, Peter Chernin. So I think that the people elements are the reason why the joint venture has done very well. And to your second question about how do they think, are they happy with the results, or how do they think about it? We have exceeded our plan in every way, shape, and form. And so I think if you were to ask them if they were here today, I think they'd be very positive on the venture because we entered into kind of new territory for them, and they didn't know what to expect. And I think they've been so happy with the growth of the brand, the growth of the business, how large it is, and where we're positioned for the future.
As a follow-up to that, in terms of the metrics by which they've judged success thus far and will judge the goals and the success of the joint venture moving forward from an audience perspective and then an advertiser perspective, what were your and their initial goals, and how have you been able to judge success on those 2 platforms, audience and advertisers, thus far?
So I'll start with the audience and then cover advertisers. So on the audience side, we started with 0 users, as you would expect, as a new company. We're at about 40 million monthly users now. So in 18 months to go from 0 users to 40 million users, that was well ahead of any plan that anyone had laid out for this business. And so to become a brand that not only have people heard about, but they care about in many cases, that's a big deal. So on that metric, going from 0 to 40 million users, monthly users, in an 18-month time frame, very, very good news. On the advertiser side, we started with 8 charter advertisers. So these are companies that were the brave souls who actually put their brands into the Hulu environment back 18 months ago. From there, we've now served over 400 advertisers. Some of the top Fortune 500 companies, we've tend to have worked with almost all of them. And so from an advertiser standpoint, we measure a number of things. First and most importantly is how did we do for our marketers, the advertisers, which is how was our recall rate for the brands and the advertising messages that were put into Hulu? What's the favorability scores of how did people think about those companies once they saw them on Hulu? And then finally, what was the purchase intent? So that's the guts of how did our service do for our advertising partners, and they've done very, very well versus other mediums that they could advertise in. And then the other 2 things we look at is, well, how many advertisers are we working with? And the good news is we've gone from 8 to over 400. And the final thing is the revenue, and our revenue is well ahead of plan, and we've been very, very fortunate to be where we're at.
Jason, while we're on the subject of advertisers, and let's look at how they view the success of the Hulu platform from their perspective. What kind of reaction have you gotten from those initial advertisers and now the swell of advertisers that have come in? How have they reacted to what you've been able to provide for them?
At first it was curiosity, which is, what is this thing Hulu that my kids are telling me all about? And so there's it started there, where we go to New York all the time, and Chicago quite a bit, to just go educate ad agencies and advertisers about, here's what we've built, here's where we think it's going, here's why we think we can help. It's moved from education to actually having them use the tools that we present to them. And so some of the things that advertisers say is they're very surprised at how many people recall their messages and their brands on Hulu. It's just not, it's not normal for people to Twitter about all of these, advertisements that they see on Hulu. In the living room, people tend to have different sort of reactions about the ad load and how many different companies are advertising, whereas on Hulu, we have less advertisers on purpose because we think that people will remember them far more and we can charge more for that. And so when you take a look at the percent of media that is consumed online versus offline, about 30% of media is consumed online now. So 70% is consumed in other mediums, whether it's a print newspaper, living room, television consumption, et cetera. But so 30% of media is consumed online. Only 8% of ad budgets are actually sent online. 8%. Big difference. Now, the natural question is, well, why is that? It's human behavior. When I deal with the heads of agencies and the media buyers, a lot of times there tends to be a very heavy human behavior element to it, which is, well, they've bought traditional media for the last 40 years this way, and it's tough to change. The new is for younger people, the new is very natural. It's the only way. But for people that have been buying, say, newspaper ads for the past 30 years, it's very difficult to have them sort of move off that. And so newspapers have a much higher percent of advertising revenue than the actual audience consumption they get. And so I think in the fullness of time, and fullness of time is 5-10 years, you're going to see that 8% number closely match the actual percentage of media consumption. So that 8% will become 30%. There's no doubt about that. But what will take some time is just for the media buyers to understand the value of all these different mediums. And by the way, I don't think that other mediums are going to go away. I think there's a whole human behavior element to that too. But in terms of online, I absolutely think that you're going to start to see the percentage of dollars going online matching the consumption. And so right now that's in the single digits in terms of what's actually being spent, but it clearly will be double digits, simply as people really understand the medium. And then there's other little things that we do which are painfully obvious to us, but they're very satisfying for an advertiser. For example, if you are the Coca-Cola company, it used to be in the living room that you would guess that most people that watch 30 Rock on Thursday, they like Diet Coke. And so therefore they run Diet Coke on 30 Rock on Thursday nights. On Hulu, you can run Coca-Cola advertisements against 30 Rock, but instead of assuming that everybody that watches it is a diet beverage drinker, you can actually let people choose at the break, would you like to watch a Coke commercial, a Diet Coke commercial, or a Sprite commercial? That's a far more efficient spend for a Coca-Cola company because I watch 30 Rock, I love 30 Rock, but I would never drink a diet beverage to save my life. So I would choose the Coca-Cola commercial, and therefore I'm more engaged in that ad, and the Coca-Cola company has just spent their money in a much better way. So those are the kind of reactions that we've gotten from advertisers.
Traditional advertisers advertising in a non-traditional platform is a big part of the fundamental business model with Hulu. So let's, I guess, take a step back and look at a macro level at that business model. How did it evolve? How did you all develop the business plan that you did in conjunction with your with the partners in the joint venture?
So the simplicity is one of our biggest guiding principles, which is let's not get too cute. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just be very simple and very focused as to what we're trying to do. And for us, from a business model perspective, we felt we had great conviction in the belief that premium content mattered, that people, consumers worldwide, would care about premium content, stories well told, really smart comedies, great drama. We had great conviction that that mattered to people. And so the business model that we started with, and you see today, is that we took a look at where's the greatest revenue being generated against premium content. And in the US, $60 billion is spent against premium content every year. $60 billion. That's bigger than the DVD business. That's bigger than the download business. And so that's where we started. And we wanted to have a free ad-supported service. And so the business model was a very simple one, which is that if we could be obsessive about making sure that we create an advertising service that was so much more effective than anything else out there for advertisers, traditional and otherwise, and marry that with premium content that consumers so highly valued, that we thought that we'd have a very good business that could scale to be very, very large, in the billions of dollars in the fullness of time. We're capitalists, just to be very, very clear. We're not in this for charity. We're in this to actually make a fair return for our investors and also make a fair return for our content owners that we serve. And in the process, we want to have a fantastic user experience and a fantastic advertiser experience. So we're very well positioned. We're ahead of plan. We feel fantastic about how we're doing financially. We were very fortunate to attract $100 million in investor funds from Providence Equity, and they're fantastic partners. I think if you were to ask them if they were here, they're over the moon about the investment. And our other investors who provided both capital and content are very happy as well. So while I won't comment on where we are financially specifically, we're ahead of plan and we're very happy with where we are.
The testimonials from users to the usability and the functionality of the site is very high and very strong. You talked about simplicity, and I've read comments where you've talked about the technological advantage of Hulu in terms of usability, so to speak. How important a decision was that in your business plan or your game plan to create this interface where the streaming is so easy and so accessible?
It was very important. Everybody thought that when we started Hulu that the 5, 6 of us that got going in the first couple of weeks, that we just put ourselves in a room and started writing code. That was sort of what people thought externally. The reality was very different. The first thing we did when we started Hulu was we put whiteboard wallpaper on all the walls. And the reason why we did that is that we wanted to write down on the walls what it was we stood for, who we wanted to be, what we wanted people to say about us once we built the service, and because we felt that if we did that, that would guide the design of the service. And so one of the things we wrote on the board, on the wall, was we wanted people to say that Hulu was very well designed and that it was unlike other websites out there, and that it was so simple and clean and focused. And so those were things that we wrote on the board before we wrote a line of code. And so that's how we defined the product and the service. And so for us, it was one of the very first things we did in terms of how we thought about the design and the usability, because the world is filled with tremendously poorly designed websites, just filled with them. Most websites that you go to, you don't know what to focus on, and we didn't want to be that kind of a website. We wanted to be a website that had a clarity of purpose and a clarity of focus, just like our business, and so that's what you see with Hulu today.
Speaking of the business and the business model, I think the beta test on this was about 2.5 years ago, is that right?
It was 2 years ago, almost to the day. October 29th, 2007 was when we went to beta.
Okay, and then the rollout publicly was about a year and a half ago?
Exactly. It was a year and a half ago, March 12th of 2008.
How has the business model since then, over the last 18 months or so, changed and evolved, and do you anticipate it continuing to move in different directions?
You know, the business model has stayed the same, remarkably so. The thing that you can absolutely count on is that if you look 10 years out, 20 years out, the only thing we can guarantee is that Hulu will look very different. In the same way that if you were to go back in time in 1995, 1996 and take a look at companies like Amazon.com and eBay and Yahoo and all the other web companies that they are so different today. I mean, Amazon sells digital readers. They sell cloud computing. It's not just a bookstore anymore. And so I think that we certainly have aspirations to grow this business and earn the right to get into other ways that we can serve our users. And so that's the one thing I can guarantee. In terms of the first year and a half, our business model has been very consistent and focused, which is we want to make sure that we can help people find and discover the world's premium content when, where, and how they want to. And when you look at what we've done thus far, it's been just that, and there's so much more to go. And so we have a long, long road ahead of us just on that. And then in time, if we earn the right to then introduce new services on top of this business that we're in today, so be it. But our business that we're currently in, you should expect to see that live long and prosper.
You mentioned Amazon.com and its evolution. You have acute firsthand knowledge of that company, spending about a decade there. What key takeaways did you take from your tenure at Amazon and working with Jed Williams that you've applied at Hulu in a non-traditional sort of new platform?
Amazon's a special company. It's one of the best companies in the world, I believe, and there's reasons for that, which is the team there, ultimately led by Jeff. Probably one of the most important things that I took away from there was the value of obsessing over customers, and it was something that initially I was exposed to at the Walt Disney Company, but I lived and breathed it for so much longer and so much deeper at Amazon because I was there for 9 years, just about 9 years. And so, Jeff did an incredibly good job of setting the standard, setting the bar for where the quality bar should be and where the obsessiveness should be in terms of customers. And that was very important for Amazon's history, and I was inspired by that. I took great satisfaction in that, and we certainly aspire to do similar things at Hulu. And so I'd say that I'm a product of my experiences in Amazon, clearly, and the Walt Disney Company as well.
Jason, when we talk about competition or just the growing online streaming platform and how much more there is out there and how many more participants there are in that game, how would you describe Hulu's sort of unique value or selling proposition compared to other online ventures, whether it's CBS Viacom or even it's a different model like iTunes? How does Hulu really distinguish itself from that minefield?
So for us, yes, there's competitors, and there's a lot of them, and there's only going to be more because this is a very big space that I think there's going to be a lot of value created over the next several decades. But that's you'd expect that in any industry where you have a great idea. And so for us, I don't have much to say about competitors because we spend all our time thinking about customers, not competitors.
And because you do that, you've been able, I'm sure, to get a lot of reaction from customers and consumers about what their experience has been. Generally, what kind of feedback, what kind of kickback do you get from them? And especially from those that have been traditional television viewers for a long, long time, what has their adaptation or transition to Hulu been like?
So it spans. You see some folks who are, I'll call it the early adopters who they were there on day one, and their response has tended to be, I've been waiting for this for 10 years, and the ability to watch what I want, when I want, and how I want it. This is the way that media always was meant to be, and so there's a lot of thank yous and a lot of good conversation that way. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, there's other people who are not comfortable with change, and they tend to be late adopters, which is fine. You have entire segments of the market, and they are, what's this Hulu thing I hear about? And there's a lot of questions about, well, do I have to download something? Is it this? Is it that? And so there's an education process. And by the way, for that segment of the population, that's why we did an ad campaign using Alec Baldwin and a bunch of other celebrities to actually introduce Hulu in a very fun way, so that people could make sure that the name Hulu was demystified and it actually presented what it was we were. And so I'd say that the response has clearly been overwhelming for us in the aggregate, but beneath that you see all different segments that are either early adopters or late adopters or somewhere in between. And so that's what we do each day.
As we look to the future and try to project 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, I know you mentioned a few minutes ago, it's a great open frontier, and we don't know exactly what that landscape is going to look like. But from a micro perspective, and then sort of hovering out 30,000 feet from a macro perspective, what do you envision or hope the future of Hulu will be? And then more generally, the future of online video streaming in general? What's the long-term sustainability, profitability, and growth potential for both you and the entire market?
Well, for the team at Hulu, and I put myself included there, of course, it's a very personal thing, which is the future of Hulu, which is, in many ways, I was inspired, to be a part of the Hulu team simply because when I was a kid, I used to get dropped off at the end of my cul-de-sac by the school bus, and I would race home to try and watch my favorite show, which was called Speed Racer, this anime title, and I was always 7 minutes late. And I'd always miss the first 7 minutes of Speed Racer, and it was so depressing as a kid. And I could never find those first 7 minutes. No matter how fast I ran, I always missed it. And so for us as a team, we want to create a media service that was the kind that we always dreamed about as a kid growing up, to be able to never miss those first 7 minutes of Speed Racer, or God forbid, to actually be able to watch it when it's convenient for you, as opposed to when a programmer in Burbank, California is scheduling it. And so for us, we won't stop until this is a worldwide service, where if you're in Slovenia or Reykjavik, Iceland, or Seattle, Washington, that you're able to find and discover and enjoy the world's premium content when, where, and how you want to. And there's a lot of devices that are getting invented each and every day that are connected to the internet, and all of those devices are great opportunities for Hulu, whether it's a car, or whether it's a refrigerator, or whether it's a mobile device, and if it's a PC, of course. And so I think that what you're going to find is we are just now entering a golden age of media, and that's something that will become painfully obvious 5 and 10 years from now. And the reason why it will become painfully obvious is that if you create content for the past 100 years, one of the biggest challenges was if you created great content, there was all this noise between you and the customer. And you had to work so hard to know the right people, to be part of a privileged class, to be able to find your audience and have a big budget to market it and all these things. Whereas with the internet and a service like Hulu, we're able to put all this content on a level playing field. And we're able to leverage a lot of technology and social networking to be able to find that audience for this content provider. And so I very much believe that we're about to enter a golden age of media because of these wonderful things that is possible for not just as a consumer to never miss the first 7 minutes of Speed Racer, but as a content creator to be able to find the audience that you so richly deserve.
And as a follow-up to that, this notion of golden era specific to video, but beyond Hulu, how big can the overall online video streaming platform become, do you think?
I'm biased, of course, but I think this is the way. Internet protocol, or IPTV as a lot of people refer to it, this is where video is going, whether it's professional content, whether it's amateur content, or somewhere in between. So I think that the things that suspiciously look like televisions today that are hanging on walls, they're just going to be wirelessly connected monitors in the future. And so in that world, you will see, wonderful video and wonderful stories, but you'll be able to do so much more in terms of discovery and interactivity and making the professional content consuming experience so much richer. And so I think it will ultimately be 100% internet protocol. I think that, so to your question, how high is up? Very high, it turns out, because I think that, this is just a much better machine. It's a much better protocol as opposed to coaxial cable or broadcast signal.